God called Hosea, just as he calls all of his people in every age, to do his part in spreading God's kingdom to the ends of the earth. And as Hosea knew, God administered the spread of his kingdom by the policies he established in his covenants. Hosea was well aware that God had already ratified his kingdom policies in 5 major covenants, beginning with all nations in Adam and Noah, and then in special covenants with Abraham, Moses, and David. Each of these covenants had particular emphases, but every successive covenant incorporated and built on the policies of the previous covenants. Like other prophets, Hosea had the special role of serving as God's emissary or ambassador who announced how God was going to implement these covenant policies. All of God's covenants established 3 basic dynamics of God's interactions with his people that shaped the contours of Hosea's ministry. For our purposes here, we'll just give a brief overview. First, in one way or another, all of God's covenants were initiated and sustained by divine benevolence, or displays of God's goodness and kindness. Second, all of God's covenants clarified the kinds of human loyalty that God required from his people in grateful response to his benevolence. And third, all divine covenants entailed 2 kinds of consequences that his people should expect: blessings for obedience and curses for disobedience.
So God wanted Israelites to remain faithful in their covenant, in the covenant with him. And he promised that if they will stay faithful in the covenant with God, things will go well with them. But if they will violate his covenant, something wrong will happen to them. This is the same even in our lives. If we remain faithful to God's covenant, God will be with us, will lead us, and will continue to work in us.
As a prophetic emissary of God's covenants, Hosea received revelations of how God had determined to direct these covenant dynamics. Then he delivered these revelations to God's people. If we consider Hosea in terms of events that took place during his years of ministry, we could define his prophetic purpose in this way. Hosea's purpose was to declare how God intended to implement the covenant dynamics of divine benevolence, human loyalty, and the consequences of blessings and curses in relation to Assyria's rise in 744 BC, the Assyrian invasion of 732 BC, and the Assyrian invasion of 722 BC.